Welcome to the Heat of Command podcast, mastering the art of fire service leadership.
Where we, your hosts, aim to teach you how to use introspection and self-reflection to be your most authentic, genuine self, leader, and human being.
And now, here are your hosts. This is Kyle Matusik.
And Carrie Henderson. Thanks for joining.
The Heat of Command podcast is back at it again. And this week, we are going to flip the script from our last episode where we talked about how to lead difficult people. Well, this week, how do we lead easy people? And I think I'm kind of anxious for where this is going to go because I think this could go in a lot of different directions. Because I think as soon as I said, how is it to lead easy people, all our listeners, we get this idea in the head and, it comes with the general characteristics of what we think somebody that's easy to lead. They're motivated, they're empowered, they bring that stuff from within. So you really don't have to do much work there. And, it's generally easy because that person in and of itself is doing a lot of the work themselves, So where is that opportunity for us as leaders to build on that? How can it come full circle to where those people you are leading that are easy could come back at you and pay some dividends and help improve you as a leader, right? Because we can easily learn our lessons from leading difficult people, but I think there's just as many lessons to learn from trying to lead the easy people or so-called easy people. And I think maybe as we get into this, we kind of break that down, kind of easy and hard and what that looks like in subordinates on what we think being difficult to lead is or being easy to lead is. So I'm excited.
Yeah, it'll be definitely interesting because when you first brought up this topic, I thought, well, what the heck would we talk about? Like, right. This is like a 5-minute episode. But then it really got my brain thinking that some of my easiest employees really made me step my game up.
Yeah.
Because they're going to expect a lot from you because they expect a lot of themselves and they're, working really hard and so on the surface, they probably do seem like easy employees, and they're easy in the fact that most of these folks that I can think of in my head, they're self-motivated. They're always trying to do the right thing. So their performance is usually pretty top notch, great patient care, great firefighters, good human beings, easy to get along with. Excuse me. They take feedback usually pretty well. But when you flip that around, they're expecting a lot out of you as well. They're expecting you to be on your A game and you to be a great performer and to be making good decisions, especially on their behalf and for your crew. So they are easy to lead on the surface, but expect a lot out of you as a leader, which is good. It's great to have people like that so that you're constantly making sure you're keeping up with good leadership stuff and good performance stuff and making sure you're training them and training your crew. And they probably have pretty high expectations of their crew members as well. So I've definitely seen those folks that are rock stars in the firehouse and they expect everyone else to be too.
Yeah, I like how you said, on the surface, they seem easy to lead, but, maybe sometimes if we really examine that and we picture those people in our heads that, are those people around they're good at their job, they listen, but on the surface they're easy to lead, but are they really easy to lead? And are there a lot of challenges that we just don't pursue because it's easy and we don't have to put time and effort in because things are just happening automatically because of their, the values that they bring into the organization. So sometimes it could just be somebody difficult hiding in plain sight. And I think that's something that we have to be careful about. So when we look at, the difficult people to lead, right? The people that, aren't good followers, that maybe have trouble with authority, that are burned out, that have a bad attitude, we can just constantly list those things. And then the people that are, easy to lead, we have this mindset that they're motivated, they're empowering, they get the job done, they do the job well, they're excited to be there. So we look at both sides of that equation, and I think each have their challenge in terms of how to effectively lead. And I think that brings up a great point when we look at leadership. Leadership doesn't stop because somebody is an excellent employee, right? I think you said it well, Carrie, where it challenges us. And I think there's the benefit of, educating yourself on leadership abilities, styles, reading, and all these things to constantly not only challenge yourself, but challenge those people who we consider are, quote unquote, easy to lead, because they might present challenges that we just, like I said, we don't want to face, because everything that's going on is easy, it's smooth. We don't have to put a lot of time and effort in. But sometimes those are the people that we might have to sink our teeth into and really spend some time in, because when we look at the motivated people and the hardworking people, what's the first thing to tend to happen to them is getting burned out, right? They load their plate up, all these other things. So, it could be this just this constant evaluation. And I think that's the challenges of being a leader, is you're willing and able to lead everybody, the difficult people and the good people, with the same amount of time and energy, but each look different. And that is the core, resiliency of a leader, is that we can apply different tactics for different people in different environments constantly. And that in and of itself, as an effective leader, is extremely challenging, because a lot of times those difficult people can take a lot of energy out of you. And so therein lies the people who are quote unquote easy to lead, and they're there to fend for themselves essentially, but they're doing it. So we're good. So it's pulling ourselves back from that. And how do we, equally divide up that ability to constantly garner the best performance and building of humans that we possibly can as effective leaders?
Yeah, I've definitely seen that go both ways, where you have someone that's difficult and they're taking up all of your time. So your easier employees are, like you said, kind of left to fend for themselves and not getting a lot of your attention. And and then I've also seen the opposite happen, where you have
Yeah.
a couple people in your crew that are just, rock stars, and you leaders giving them all of their attention, and their poor performers, they just kind of ignore, like it'll just go away, like it'll fix itself, and it won't. And so I've definitely seen that go both ways. So that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's a great point. That is absolutely true. And I think because it's easy, right? It's easy to go the easy road.
Yeah.
And it's easy to go root on the motivated, a good worker, and somebody that appears to have a good head on their shoulders. That's easy. And when they rock it out, and we see leaders take credit for that, even though they had nothing to do with it, right? But leaders will hang their hat on that person, and just the people who are sinking, they continue to let sink, right? And to me, you're not, if you're doing that, you're not a leader, right? We have to be able to, again, share the wealth, and look at all our people and develop strategies for each of them individually, and all that constantly looks different. But it's just kind of that yin and yang, how it's so different on where people go, where people want to spend their time and energy as far as leaders. And you know th- being a motivated, hardworking person, you know as we have talked about, a kind of our overall theme of what we talk about in the soft skills and empathy and compassion. I think a lot of times when it's those easy people to lead, it's easy to forget that they have a story too, right? So we might lack that empathy and compassion, just for the mere fact that they seem to have their stuff together, so they don't need that. But I would argue that is not true. And even if they are that motivated person, right? We have to have that empathy and compassion, and maybe ask ourselves why. Why are they so motivated? Are they a people pleaser? Do they not feel good enough, so they're constantly trying to do more? A lot of times, and I could speak, on a personal side on this. We look at how people cope their way through lives from the way things have happened to them as early as childhood, and sometimes people cope by just loading their plate up and being that motivated and individual with the hardworking, and they still have a story behind that. But because they're good, we never pursue that deeper sense of purpose and identity in our individuals. And I think as in the fire service specifically, they claim it to be a family and a brotherhood. I can argue that, but that's another episode. We make these claims, and then it's how do we generate an identity beyond the job and the uniform. And I think that's important. And I think that's something that's worth spending time with and pursuing and examining as, a leader to subordinate, and having those deep, beyond the fire service questions, but those deep questions of purpose and who are you and your identity, and well-rounding as a human being, as a mother, as a father, as a husband, as a wife. We can encompass so much within our four walls of the fire service. So, it's balance. It's balance a lot when we look at the ones easy to lead. How do we balance this out? Because, like I said earlier, it can lead to burnout quickly, and it can lead to a whole lot of bad things if we don't get to the root of why people are the way they are. And I think that's the coolest thing about leadership, is figuring out why people are the way they are and then leading according to that.
Yeah. And I love that was so well said, that I definitely have been guilty of that. I've got some guys and girls that work for me right now that are just rock stars. I mean, they just kill it. They're self-motivated. They're doing their work all independently. And we work at different locations because I'm the training chief. So I have a captain that's down at the fire academy a lot of days. I have an EMS educator, and I have some part-time EMS staff, and they all just kind of work very independently, and we're not always at the same location. And so I forget sometimes, like you said, they have stories, and several of them have gone through some really tough personal stuff this year. And luckily they are great. They're great employees, but they're great human beings too. And so they've been very willing to share, what they've been going through and how it affects them and what they need from me. And so they've made they always make my job super easy. But you're right, is I have to remember, just because they're killing it at work doesn't mean there isn't something else behind that, or something else going on. And is work an escape, or is
Right.
work something
Yeah.
that's keeping their mind off of something that's hard? And what can I do to support them? Even though they're doing great, I still need to support them and figure out what they need. So that was very well said, Kyle. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah. And I think that this is like really the one thing that differs within our culture, our environment as firefighters and shift work, than the general public in the workforce. I think there is such a huge opportunity I think there's an opportunity and a necessity to build relationships on understanding each other personally beyond the uniform. And I think we do a poor job of that. I think it's so black and white on job performance and your attitude for the job and all this stuff. And we forget about everything else. When you're spending 24 hours away from your family with a different set of people, or 48 hours, a lot of places going to 48, 96, this stuff matters more than working a 9 to 5, right? Because you wake up at your house on a 9 to 5, you spend time and breakfast with the family, you go to work, you go do your job, you come home, you're with your family and friends, right? So it's different. And this is like the biggest change, I think, in a regular job versus what we do. And it's an opportunity to grow on a personal level. And when we look at these people who are easy to lead, in my opinion, it's an opportunity to really lead them as a human being beyond the job. Because I personally feel that will make them better firefighters, better at their job, develop traits like empathy and compassion, which sometimes are hard to teach. So it's just this whole new world and opportunity that we could go down, instead of trying to get them to become better at their job when they're already motivated to do that. Right? We have to challenge them. We can't make life easy. The good book only promises one thing in life, right? And that's suffering. So we need to prepare these people for things that have already happened or are yet to come. And I think that's where the biggest opportunity is. And with that, when we look at the people that are easy to lead and difficult to lead, when we are doing that kind of leadership with the people that are easy to lead, there's others that are watching. So those people that are difficult to lead might not essentially be difficult for very long when they watch what's going on there. So I think this is just this full circle thing of how do we, individually leading people, the people that are easy to lead, how do we challenge them further as human beings, as getting ready for a tough life and building resiliency. And then the people that are challenged, are tough to lead, maybe they start seeing that and they get hungry for that. And they want that, but they know they got to go through the first steps of improvement of attitude, work performance, et cetera, et cetera. But they want to get there, and now they have a target that they want to reach. So it's just this full circle thing. And again, we could sit here all day and talk about this, but putting this stuff into action is hard. And there's no easy way about it. I can't just give you a checklist and be like, do this, do A, B, and C. It's not gonna work, right? There's gonna be a lot of successes and failures on your part as a leader of what works and what doesn't work for each individual, and taking that into your stock and your bank to continually develop yourself as a leader. So it's just this huge opportunity to challenge yourself more and just be something that each individual in your organization needs. And that is hard to do.
Yeah, it is. And a couple other things come to mind when I think about leading really great people, really great employees is, yeah, I'm sure everybody out there has heard or knows of people in your agency that they've been coined the golden child, right? They get everything. Yeah. They're the golden child. And I always challenge that because I've seen some of the golden children and a lot of times they've earned it. They're getting extra things or they're getting everything they ask for because they've worked for it. So I get a little defensive when I hear somebody labeled, oh, that's because they're a golden child. So they get all these perks or whatever. They get to be on all the committees. They get to do all these things. It's like, well, if you always follow through with what you say you're going to do, you're a top performer, you're humble about it. Like, why would you not get to do some of those things? So I always challenge. Now, I do think there are the opposite ends of things. People have their favorites for whatever reason. And sometimes that does happen unfairly. I'm not naive enough to believe that isn't occurring. Surely. But I do think sometimes people get that label a little bit unfairly. And it burns me up. Because I had an employee ask me one time, well, don't you think such and such is a golden child and that's why he gets all these things? And I said, well, why wouldn't he? And he looked at me and I was like, look at what he's done. Look at all of these things he's done for this department. Like, why would he not get that?
Yeah.
Like, what have you done? And I was pretty blunt about it. I was like, what have you done compared to what he's done? Can you compare yourself to him? And he was like, well, no. I'm like, okay, then. The person's retired now, but it was an interesting conversation. So, but yeah. And there was something else I was going to bring up and I forget. My brain will come back to it. I'm a little under the weather today. So I'm like in this fog, but it'll come back to me.
Yeah, I think in terms of speaking to our entire audience, I there's absolutely the people that deserve everything that they're given, right? But to speak to, because I understand in every organization, for our listeners, there are absolutely people who are just yes people and they're pegged the golden children and haven't done very much, and that could be aggravating, but that's just one of those things that you have to overcome, right? That's not in the fire service alone. That's everywhere, and a lot of the stuff we talk about, like some of the things are just the way they are in society in general. And those are just things that you have to learn how to overcome. And yeah, that's a whole nother issue. And that's a challenge in and of itself. But again, you stay true to your values and work on the things that, we talk about and, build your group of people, that's how you succeed and get ahead, and a lot of times when I look at leadership and stuff and developing people, it's to be motivated and encouraged to do the job and do the job well. But it's such a bigger picture in life, how to have joy and peace during times of trial and how to, navigate things and build resiliency and all these other things. So when we look at those easy to lead and even those difficult to lead, like having this broader spectrum of what that means and how we develop the people to achieve that. Because again, I truly believe everything comes full circle. We develop better human beings, we automatically develop better firefighters. So it's just taking this kind of different approach. How do I, when we look at leadership, it's okay, how do I get somebody to pull a pre-connect faster, right? Like, is that leadership or is that just task-oriented drills, repetition, things like that, where we can develop stronger minds and more resiliency that can think under high times of high stress and high pressure and make sound decisions, and all this stuff plays a huge, huge role in all of that. So if you're a leader, it's kind of taking that step back and looking at things not just so close and task oriented, but broader and more personality, and how do we achieve these things through our easy people and our difficult people.
Yeah, definitely. And I I think it's important to, and I don't know how to tie this in together, but I've been listening to the 5 dysfunctions of a team, and I just love it because I can see each of the people that they describe, each of the dysfunctions of the team. They they have like a fake company that they're telling a story about, and they have individuals that are each having these different issues. And I'm like, oh, I can see that in every fire service. Like I can see the people specifically in the book. They do talk about, there's a couple people that they seem to be really easy employees, right? They're doing what the boss wants and stuff, but at the same time, they come with their own issues, right? They come with their own thing. And so a lot of times it's not just leading people individually, it's leading your team, and what is going to make your team or your crew function well. It's not just a bunch of easy employees put together in a group that would make your life easy. It's how they function together as a team and work as a team. And I love, I'm listening to it on Audible. I love listening to it because I just think it it just applies in every aspect of life, like church groups. It applies at anything where you're on a group trying to accomplish something. That book is great for learning how to lead a group and not just leading individuals. Because you and I talk a ton about leading individuals and different things, different issues and problems, but I've loved learning about leading a team. It's been really cool. So
Yeah, I think that brings its own challenges, but to the credit of our industry, I think under times of response, right, responding to incidents, I think for the most part, most places do very well there. Sure, there might not be trust, or you don't like the authority in place, whatever the case may be, but at the end of the day, more times than not, the job's getting done, and it's getting done pretty well. And I think that's just the innate desire for people in this profession and to do well. So it's like we have this switch in our head where when you go out to a call, you just could turn it off, right? And it's business only. And then, it's, and then as soon as it's over, the switch gets flipped and it's back to reality, I guess, right?
yeah.
So I think, and I'm not discrediting anything you're saying. That sounds like a very interesting book because you're right. It's something that we don't talk about a lot, is leading the group. But at the same token, I think a lot of times we do well there for the most part, especially in response, in terms of responding to incidents. So I think that's, I don't know.
And I think because my perspective is so different now as an admin chief, that I think in my head that's what I'm thinking of, like leading groups like committees and like work groups and like meetings, having meetings that are productive and
A
and having
productive meeting.
yeah, and having the ability
What's
to
that? Sorry.
I am like crazy now about meetings. Like I'm a stickler about how a meeting should go. And with this book, they talk a lot about your group should be able to have conflict, and if you don't have any
Yeah.
conflict in a meeting or in your group, then that's something definitely wrong. So you've got to be able to have conflict to help make decisions and have good discussion and all this stuff. So that's in my brain. That's where I'm thinking. Because I feel like you do about the operations stuff. We practice that and train on that, and we're good at that. That's to me, that's a little bit different. But I'm thinking of like firehouse, leading inside the firehouse, the group there, and meetings, specifically meetings and committees.
Well, I think we got our next episode.
Yeah.
Leading groups.
Yes.
So kind of a question and discussion point for us, something that I was just kind of thinking about. So the people that are easy to lead, how difficult is it, or should we always be saying yes? Or how difficult is it to tell them no to something? Let's say they want to take another class, they want to get another certification. Is there benefit to saying no?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think so. I had an interesting conversation with a captain last week, and he is a go-getter. He's like on every committee. He wants to be in the middle of everything. He's a great leader. He says hard things to people, but in a way that they can receive it. He's a really good, you know, but he's one of these people we're talking about that's like easy to lead, right? For the most part, I think he is. And so I had a conversation with him. He's on a work, I don't want to say too much because I don't want people to figure out who I'm talking about, but he's on a work group that I am facilitating right now. And he asked if he could be responsible for one of the portions of it. He said, can the requests for this part come to me and I handle it? And normally I'm like, yep, because he's, but he's terrible about checking emails and responding to emails. So I said, I would love to give that responsibility to you, but you don't answer your email. And he was like, oh, you're right. He was like, I promise I will be better. But yeah, like I want to say, and I think people say yes to him a lot because he is very, and everything else except for email, he's very, very good. But yeah, I do think there's definitely a time to say no, like you brought up earlier. If you feel like this is a coping mechanism or a response to something to pile more on your plate, definitely that's a time to say no. But I think sometimes too, like I've seen folks that are really, really great and they do all the things. And sometimes I have to say, we've got to let other people have a
Yeah.
shot. Like, especially for committees and things like that, for everyone to be able to grow and for different perspectives, sometimes, it's just got to be a no, just for that reason, which sucks for them because they're like, hey, I've done all these things, but you're telling me no, so that somebody that hasn't done as much as me gets to do it. So it sucks.
Yeah. And so then, how do you curb that anger or resentment that
Yeah.
might come from that?
Yeah,
Right.
we definitely had some anger. We're doing a PPE trial, a wear trial to look at new turnout gear, and tons of people wanted to be on that committee. But we just, a successful group isn't 50 people. You just can't get much done, if you have that many people. So we really had to curb it back. And we had some of our rock star folks we couldn't put on because they've been on everything, right? So we were trying to bring in some new people and people from all different perspectives and age groups and time and service and all this stuff. And there was some hurt feelings. And I was like, I get it. You wear this gear and I get why you would want to participate. But so.
Yeah, I think that there's the opportunity, right? When we seek those opportunities to how to lead our strong employees, there's one right there. How are they handling times of adversity? How do they handle those? How do they handle when you say no, yet their comeback is going to be, I do everything, I'm motivated, so and so isn't, they're not going to do it. So how do you combat that? And again, that's an opportunity to build as a human being and develop good characteristics as a person in patience and understanding. And hey, maybe I'm seeing something that you're not. You're on a quick road to burnout. I see it and you don't. So I'm going to hit the brakes for you because that's what good leaders do. I'm going to tap the brakes. I'm going to get into this conversation. I'm willing to have this conversation and be uncomfortable. And you could hate me for however long you want. But through my experience, my years, whatever, the things I've seen, experienced, I can see where you're headed. And to be able to have that conversation instead of yes all the time. And then next thing you know, this person's drowning. And then they become one of those people that are hard to lead. And that's the last thing that we want, is to kind of flip that on somebody. We want to keep them motivated and encourage their entire career and beyond. So it's that constant balance of assessing things. I also think it's okay to, you know, again, we look at people who have been afforded a lot of opportunities and given a lot. But at the same token, I think it's okay to disappoint them. I was just talking to my kids the other day. They wanted to do something, blah, blah, blah. And, they're fortunate. They know they are. And I said no. And for the main reason of like, they need to be disappointed once in a while. Life ain't always easy. There's lots of challenges. Let's see how you're going to overcome this. So we can challenge people with that and see their reaction and develop further areas to where we can provide training and learning so they can continue to grow. Because everything we do is a learning opportunity. It's just how we want to face it. And do we want to face it? That's the biggest thing. Do you want to face the people that are easy to lead and the people that are challenging to lead? And how are you going to do that? Right? That's the challenge.
Mm-hmm. And I have a question too. So you had a great question. So my question is, what do you do? Like, how do you stay on top of being a good leader for good employees? Like really, really motivated go-getter employees. Like, how do you make sure you're staying, like, keeping your A game there? Like, and what do you do if it's slipping?
Yeah, I think there's a few things. Number one, if you're an effective leader out there, what are you doing to constantly improve yourself? Are you listening to podcasts like The Heat of Command? Because if you're not, then, start there. You constantly got to keep challenging yourself. And when things seem comfortable and easy, right, it's something you're missing something. You know, I don't think a lot in this life is meant to be comfortable. I think a lot of learning happens when you're uncomfortable. So if you kind of see yourself skating and things are just kind of flowing and they're good and no complaints, maybe you're okay with that. And that's fine, right? But if you're a leader, I would challenge that. I hope you're not okay with that. And it's how do we get more out of our people? And again, beyond the uniform, but more. And I think it's finding those areas where, and that's that introspective outlook. Where are you weak? And maybe finding those people that challenge your weakness and start trying to lead them, because that'll make you better at leading the easy people. So I think it's that constant, self-reflection. What do you have? What are you doing as far as reading, seminars, things like that, education? I mean, that's always a part of it, going to trainings. And then mentorship. I mean, that's something we always talk about. And I think it is just so vital to get to the next step, because I think it's a very challenging course to take to try and achieve, let's just use the word greatness, goodness, whatever, achieve that next level on your own. I'm not saying it's not doable, but if you really want to be an expert at leadership, if you really want to be able to lead all people, challenging, easy, whatever, you need somebody who's gone through it and done it and have learned the hard lessons and are willing to sit down with you and have the conversations and guide you and challenge you, right? I think as you grow as a leader, a lot of times your circle starts to diminish. And the further you get up, there's less people above you to kind of lead you. So I think there's the opportunity to pull yourself out of the four walls, and where else can you learn? From who else can you learn? And I think there's a lot of people out there with a lot of information that could be extremely beneficial to our industry. But a lot of times we just like to stay in our little environments on what our culture tells us. And I think that is detrimental to the constant growth of the fire service. And again, that's something that me and you have talked about a lot, is pulling yourself out of the fire service. Get out. With shift schedule, you have opportunities to go work part-time work, and you could go try different things, different organizations, see how leadership is done there. Get involved in volunteer organizations from, the Red Cross, the Salvation Army, there's so many out there. Find what are you passionate about and go do that, and volunteer some time and see what leadership looks like there. Look at religious organizations, churches, they always want people with life experiences and challenges and willing to talk about it, and go do it. Go get involved and find a pastor or priest who's going to guide you in a different direction. So it's looking at those opportunities. But again, if you want to be an effective leader and you're kind of just sailing because you got a good crew, you got a good organization, and things are just falling in place, well, and you're not doing anything, that's not a road to being an effective leader, because it should be a constant look for challenges. And again, use caution. You want to prevent burnout as well. And periods of rest are absolutely necessary. So I don't want to take away from that as well. But I think it's important to constantly challenge yourself. And I think we can challenge ourselves in ways that won't burn you out, that don't take a whole lot of time and effort, but are yet empowering and build in energy. So you're right, we're here to serve in all aspects of life. So it's looking for those opportunities. And It's just having to take this approach that is, I have to do something because it's not just going to come to me. Things aren't just going to happen always like they are now. I am going to face challenges. So you have to instigate what is next. You have to figure it out and figure out those environments that are going to support you yet challenge you.
Yeah. And if you're constantly the type of person, if you're the type of leader, like we're talking about this, constantly seeking out growth and development and self-reflection and all of that stuff, and you've got your crew, dialed in, and you're leading, you're being a great leader, it's worth mentioning that stuff happens in your own life too. And so there's going to come a time, and it happened to me as a captain, where you're going through something, but if you've been doing all this work, when that happens, your crew gets it, and your crew steps up and they take care of you. Because this happened to me. I went through a you know a divorce, and my personal life was a mess. And my crew, man, they were so good to me during that time, because they knew I was really struggling, and I was coming to work thinking that I was masking it all. I was like, I'm coming to work and I'm it's not bothering me at all. Look at me. I'm not even crying at work today. But they knew, they could definitely tell I was not, like I had been, and they slid right in and just took care of each other and took care of me. It was so great to have had those folks on my crew when I went through what I went through, because they were so easy. They made my life so easy, and so very thankful for them. So it's important for everyone to hear that you're not always going to be 100%, no matter what you think what you think you're doing, or if you think you're hiding it, or you'll go through something at some point in your career that knocks you on your knees, and if you've been doing the right things beforehand. And I'm not saying I was doing everything right by any means, but the guys I had then were super. So it makes it easy.
Yeah, that's where everything comes full circle with the time and effort that you put in. And, I think that's another interesting part within our culture and our environment. Like when we go through life struggles, like it comes to work with us,
Yeah.
they used to say, don't bring, work home, and don't bring home to work. But in this job, I mean, you can't do that. And if you're doing that, you're struggling, period. Right. There's no in between on that. To me, that's pretty black and white, and it comes with you. And, you develop these crews, and you have a good leadership style, and then they see when you're down and they can pick up the pieces, man. That is just awesome. It's really awesome. And, on that note, when we look at those people that are easy to lead, and we talked about what else is going on in their life, and it's building them up as leaders within every aspect of their life, whether it be family, relationships outside of the firehouse, things of that nature. So I just think there is always a lot of opportunity for people to be led. And it's, are you willing to take that journey into self-awareness, self-reflection, and then developing new strategies that you might not be very good at, right? So it's a humbling experience. Leadership is humbling. It's challenging. It's hard. You're not always going to be the most liked. And are you willing to take on all those challenges and provide something that is so needed in our industry?
Yeah. Well, this turned out amazing again.
Always does.
I don't know what our listeners think, but it always makes me feel better. So,
like I said, it's our free therapy session, right?
Yeah, it is. It really is. Yeah, I was like, this may be like the shortest episode in history, because, like, what do you talk about when you have good leading easy people? But
nope.
No, there's lots to talk about. As
There
always
is. Always is.
All right. Well, thank you all for tuning in again. We are always thankful for our listeners that stick around every week. And for those of you that pop in and out, or if it's your first time listening, go back and check out our other episode. You can skip the first episode. Probably that one's probably a mess.
I was just going to say that. Don't listen to the first one. Maybe we should redo that one. But it's cool to see where you came, right?
Yeah,
it's always important.
It is.
There's always got to be a starting point. So
yes. So, all right. Until next time.
As we wrap up another episode, this has been Kyle
And Carrie.
from the Heat of Command podcast.
Thank you, as always, for listening. Please make sure to follow and subscribe on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. And as always, we love the feedback. Keep it coming.
See you next time.